Kia ora everybody. We're sitting here with our first return guest, Professor Grant Schofield, and his colleague, Dr. Caryn Zinn. It's an absolute pleasure to have you guys on here. In terms of the low-carb, high-fat community, you guys, not just famous New Zealand, Australasia, but world-renowned, I reckon. And we'll start off before we get into the nitty-gritty. Caryn, what did you get up to on the weekend?
What did I get up to? A bit of running on Saturday, a bit of biking on Sunday with a dog, and then quite a lot of writing, actually, because we, believe it or not, we're writing another book. So a bit of work and play.
Oh, jeepers. And you, Grant, what did you do?
Well, I'd like to say it's a lot of work, but I was going to go for a run on Saturday, but I felt too tired, so I went for a walk. And then my oldest son broke his hand playing hockey, so that was the afternoon all taken up.
Oh, no.
And then Sunday I went for a long run. I'm really into this easy aerobic stuff at the moment. I know the flavour of the month is HIIT, everyone high intensity, but I've gone and done the opposite. Full fat burning.
Why does that surprise you?
Yeah. Then I built some swords and daggers out of wood with my youngest kids, which I know is not very politically correct, but that's the way it goes.
Nice. So you've got to have a bit of fun and play. I can definitely relate to your slow exercise at the moment, not getting much sleep, so try not to burn myself out.
Right.
Grant, since we last talked to you in, I think it was October or so, what's changed with you, mate? You're still knocking down the door with the Ministry of Education?
I think what's changed in New Zealand is that we've got a new government, one that's, I think, more receptive to making changes to, especially for our kids, how we eat and how much they move. So that's a good thing. What exactly that looks like is still to be determined. So I've still, be pushing on the, we still have guidelines even for our young people that tell them to eat low-fat products and that sort of stuff, which is just not evidence-based at all. So hopefully there's an opportunity in the next few months to do quite a lot more in that space with government. So that'll be good. Don't hold your breath though, because you'll suffocate.
And Caryn, for those that don't know you, how would you describe yourself today? Who is Dr. Caryn Zinn?
Who is Dr. Caryn Zinn? She is an awesome lady who is a real advocate of whole food. I think I could describe myself as I used to be quite conservative in my nutrition beliefs, and that all just went out the window about 6 years ago. And now I'm an advocate for something totally different to what I believed in before, which is the way forward for nutrition. So that's who I am, what my beliefs are. In my work life, I am an AET lecturer and researcher. I do some consultancy, and that I just do a whole bunch of other cool stuff on weekends when I get the time.
You're still practicing, you're practicing dietitian still, right?
Yeah, so I'm a clinical practicing dietitian. So it's really quite nice because the practicing gives you stories and gives you ideas to research, and then when you talk to the students about it, you can get them to work it out for themselves. So the three things together, the teaching, research and consultancy, is a really, really good mix.
Lovely. And as you said, it gives you an idea for that next research project, what's working, what's not working and why, which is awesome. And unfortunately we won't have published this before the result comes out, but I believe you in South Africa studied under Professor Tim Noakes.
Oh, yeah.
And you said it wasn't in nutrition, but what was your experience of the great man, and what are you hoping to see out of, hopefully this week, the results?
Yeah, so I'm hoping to see, and I'm expecting to see, a total exoneration of him. I think it's just cruel what they have done. He is one of the smartest and most humble man I've ever met, one of the most genuine characters. He's dedicated his whole life to research, to sports science and nutrition research. And the last time he changed his mind in the area of nutrition, he was proved to be right after everyone gave him a bit of a ruckus. So this is sort of the second time round, and let's hope the end of March will bring a complete exoneration from this appeal process.
This whole thing's just a cook-up, though, isn't it? It's just ridiculous. And there's no real basis for this whole things of doctor-client relationships, and it's just nonsense,
No,
isn't it? Really? So you understand the finer details.
It's absolute nonsense, and it was proven quite quickly that there was no doctor-patient relationship. If anyone knows Twitter, and that's half the sort of joke about this whole trial, is that these people don't know about Twitter. And if you know anything about Twitter, you'll know that there cannot be a doctor-patient relationship.
But the complaint was never even brought by the person involved. It was
exactly. In fact, they're wondering if the person involved actually exists at all. They think it's a whole setup. So it's interesting because what you see in the media about the trial versus what is being talked about and being written about in the background is just absolutely fascinating. That the politics that goes behind it is really interesting. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. And you two are involved with low carb down under, which again is another story of upset people and doctors. Now Gary's not even going to be practicing, it seems. You spoke about it, and I don't know how long it was ago, but your nutritionist perspective and your sort of coming out as low carb, has the old guard still been giving you a tap on the shoulder, or were you the support for the way you practice sort of improving?
To be honest, in the beginning there was a bit of jumping up and down, and for the last 3 or so years it's totally settled down. So in my world, with the Dietitians Board New Zealand, I renew my practicing certificate every year. In fact, I did it over the weekend. We have to engage in this continuing competency scheme, so I write everything that I do, everything that I'm involved in, and it seems to be well supported.
But you've been through a sort of examination of and complaints, which you've...
Yeah, I mean, the biggest complaint actually came from the Australians, the Dietitians Association of Australia, and half the complaint was actually nonsense.
Yeah, so it wasn't. So I think we would say, Ryan, I got this of George Henderson, actually, one of our researchers. He reckons, and I actually quite agree with him. He reckons that New Zealand's actually quite a civil society.
Absolutely, I would agree.
Like we do engage more civilly and fairly on things. Now that's not always the case, and you don't always see that. But I think in this stuff, besides the initial furor, and Caryn's stuff had complaints made against it, but in fact it all came from Australia.
Yeah, and to be fair, anyone who complains to any health professionals board, they need to follow process. So what the New Zealand dietitians did was they just followed process, and they investigated what they need to investigate. I rebutted what I needed to rebut. I needed to have some counselling on social media about behaving on social media. So that's fine, that's fair enough. But since then, all good.
We have the same sort of thing with ophthalmologists and optometrists. In New Zealand, we have a very civilized relationship, whereas in Australia, they're at each other's throats. So I don't know, it might say something about Aussies.
Exactly, especially with what they've been doing in the cricket and all that sort of stuff. It's like, well, we just wouldn't engage in that sort of stuff, touch wood.
No, we've interviewed plenty of nice ones, but yeah, it's an interesting as a bystander. Now, Grant, last time we had you on, you touched on the fact that the thing you'd like to see rid of is this low-fat milk in schools. I'll give you the floor to delve a little bit into why is low-fat milk maybe not the answer,
Oh, but on its own?
Yeah, or maybe on its own, or in our schools. Why?
Well, it's not an answer on its own, but I just think the low-fat milk symbolises everything that's wrong with the nutrition guidelines, because it's not only is there no evidence for that switching to that from full fat being helpful, it's likely on the balance of evidence, and the evidence isn't overwhelming, that eating full fat dairy products is associated in younger people with less obesity, less diabetes, and healthier kids. So just to me, just basic evidence, we should be thinking about that. On its own, it's not the answer, though, of course. And also, I think part of the answer with diet is sticking to obesity as we must sort obesity as a solution. It's like we've got diet-related quality of life and we've got diet-related illness, and one of those things is being too fat. But that's hardly the end of everything. everything from our mental health to to the condition of our skin and our eyes and everything in between.
Now the gut.
Now the gut
gut's a big one,
depend on us eating healthily, and we're sticking with obesity. And the trouble with that is, unless you show BMI outcomes for this study, it didn't do anything. In my education job, I was going to run from obesity, guys. I'm not promising to solve obesity. I'm promising to get people eating more healthily. The low-fat milk transitioning into obesity is really something that's, careful what you ask for, because then you miss all the other good stuff.
That's right. And so it must be great having Caryn. You work with Dilworth. What sort of changes have you implemented there? And then you touched on mental health. What sort of full relationship do the kids start to have with food in Dilworth?
Yeah, so the Dilworth example was a great story, actually. And I started working with them in the end of 2015. And we worked with a rural campus. And so they had about 90 boys there. So they live it's a boarding school. And what they decided to do was to have a look at the menu and to analyze it and to change it based on what they found. It was really, really high in sugar. So what we managed to do was change the menu towards one which is whole food based, lower in carbohydrate overall, but mostly, your refined, your sugars, and an increase in healthy fat. And, they measured the boys before the start of the term, at the end of the term. And, again, you look at the obesity thing, you saw about a half a kilo on average drop and about 0.3 BMI drop and a little bit of a drop on the
And the boys are still growing as well, so you got that.
Yeah, that's right. But the most important thing is that they love the food. Well, not everyone loved the food. You know what boys are like. Some of them complain that they don't like cauliflower rice or whatever. But by and large, they really loved the change. And they felt really good. Now, we didn't do a trial on this and do focus groups and record anything, but it was just talking to the chefs and talking to the teachers.
Well, the head chef lost 25 kilos.
Yeah, well, that was the start of it.
Yeah.
And the boys loved the food. And then, from every year, so 2016, 2017, and even this year, I've continued to work with them with the junior and the senior school. The chefs are constantly looking at their menus. They're putting their new chefs through training, and we've managed to get about 100 grams of pure sugar out of their diet.
A week or a day?
A day.
What?
Yeah, a day.
A day.
100. I mean, it's interesting when you look at the menu of boarding schools and the live-in arrangements. They have to have morning tea. They have to have dessert, and they have to have an unlimited supply of bread and juice. And there's absolutely no reason for it.
No, they don't have to.
According to the original guidelines, this is what people live by and what the food service managers live by. So we just made some subtle and not so subtle changes, and we just made it a whole lot healthier. Now, we haven't taken away every single piece of bread or piece of fruit that the children could have. That would just be stupid. But we've made some really, really good changes, and they've kept it up all this time, which is so impressive. It's just a great, great school to work with.
Well, the other good thing about the rural campus, of course, Ryan, is that you can't walk down if you don't like what you get, you can't go into the shop and substitute for a pie and Coke because there is no shop. So that was a good school to do an intervention on, to be fair. Yeah.
But the other thing that was so good about that work was that they engaged the teachers and they engaged the students, and it was a whole school approach. Everyone knew why they were doing what they were doing. So that was really impressive.
No, that's fantastic. It's cool to hear, and I did like the story about the chef when I saw the photos of before and after. It was quite a a marked difference. Caryn, you put up a blog about oils and these industrial oils, and when Grant and I wrote an article last year for eye health, we talked about how these might be disrupting macular degeneration, and again back to low carb down under, they had an ophthalmologist there speaking about how bad these oils are. We'll use the term bad, I don't know. Questionable, we'll put it that. What is your opinion on the oils, and then we'll throw to you afterwards, Grant.
My opinion on the oils is that they should be avoided at all cost, but for two reasons. Let me just say that the research the hard research is not quite there yet, the causal research, particularly with macular degeneration. So it's all epidemiology stuff. But for two reasons I'm against them. First reason is that they are highly processed. And if you just YouTube how they make canola oil, you'll be horrified at all the processes that are involved. The second thing, and this is the biggie, is that they are very high in omega-6 oils, omega-6 fats, and those fats within the body are quite unstable, and that they are subject to damage. So they're very high in omega-6, and the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in the body gets a little bit out of whack. So we know that if it's in a good ratio, like a 1-to-1 or a 4-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, that's a really good anti-inflammatory type picture. But the more 6 we have, the more inflammatory it becomes. So you could attack that in two ways. You can just go, well, I'll just eat a whole bunch more fatty fish and take some omega-3 supplements, which is, well, it's one way to handle it. But the better way to handle it is to bring down those omega-6s from processed vegetable oils. Yeah.
So I think that's great stuff. I'd only add to that. I think, historically, this whole paleo stuff's really interesting. And you go, well, what's historically been in the human hunter-gatherer food supply? So it's been around 3-to-1 omega-6s to 3s, depending on where you came from. And, in wild animals, that's about the ratio of fats that you're eating in that animal. The trouble is, of course, that every animal that we eat now has the same problem that we have, because as soon as you start eating this, large amounts of these polyunsaturated industrial vegetable oils, it actually starts to change your own cellular makeup and what you're made of and the sort of fat composition you have. And then you end up with, arguably less stable lipid bilayers in the cells, and, cells are just more prone to damage. And there's at least some plausible biological argument about, skin cells and how they react to UV, on different diets and that sort of stuff. So that, it's interesting to see how that unfolds. But of course, the main issue is you start chomping down something like a salmon, which you'd expect, as a salmon swimming around in the sea. How could that be different? Well, you start to feed these ones in fish farms on, essentially grain, and a bunch of other crappy oils making up those foods. You end up with a completely different fish. So the food supply has changed, and I think this is what you see in the US as well. Like, there's really there's a real vegan on-trend sort of rapid growing save the planet thing at the moment, which, I sort of get that. I don't want to wreck the planet. Who does? And I get that humans could eat some more vegetables sometimes. That's great. But then to go out and say that red meat's poisonous and it's going to kill you and cause all these things, I think's not true. Accepting that, though, obviously there's a thing about processed meat, and that's processed foods. I think the only place where there's evidence that, some animal products have caused some small amount of harm is in the US. And I think you don't see these effects in Australia and New Zealand or Europe, where they don't grain feed lot feed and corn feed their livestock. You see it in countries where they do. You got this whole oil omega-6 thing just permeating the food supply. And the last thing I say, you just go out for dinner, even at a decent restaurant, pay your money. You know they're going to be cooking in crappy oils. Like you just, it's so there. It's like they're going to be pouring soybean oil or corn oil or canola onto the thing, and that's what they're cooking. And I quite like going out for dinner. I don't know about you guys, but it's great. But that's just annoys me.
That's why you can't really avoid. You can avoid going out for dinner if you want to be totally antisocial. So you've just got to control what you can control, I believe. So go out for dinner and do your thing, and also don't buy processed food, because even if you think you're buying the good food like cashew nuts or almonds, they're going to be done in sunflower or canola oil. So you've got to get the raw variety and do it yourself. Control what you can control, and every now and again, when you don't have control, you're going out or you are in a major hurry and you grab a roast chicken from the supermarket and it's done in canola oil. It's just how it is every now and again. So it's what you do most of the time that's really important. 80% of the time, just do it well, and 20% of the time,
Also, I've got a question for you there. So sorry, I know this is your interview, right?
No, that's good. That's good.
So how long before it's, there was a time when it wasn't that acceptable to ask them to have no bread with their scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
How long before it's acceptable to go, look, give me the eggs. I just don't want you to cook in that crappy oil. I'm only eating if you do it in butter or olive oil or coconut oil.
That's a really interesting question. And I think, I don't know is the answer, but I think...
You don't do that, do you?
No, I don't do that. Not that destructive when I go out. But I do think, I'd like to think that eggs are cooked in butter. So if you're going out there, you have scrambled...
Would you like to think that?
I'd like to think that.
You'd taste it.
I don't know. But if you go to the same... I reckon if you go to the same place regularly, you become the local, you've got your community. Ask the questions. I know someone who, every time I meet her for coffee, she brings her own bottle of raw milk and she says, I'd like a flat white and can you use this milk? So it might be that you go to a restaurant.
There's a line here though, isn't there? You can be that person.
You can be that person, yeah. And it depends on what you want. But, maybe in 10 years' time or maybe in 2 years' time, we'll be going out to a restaurant with our families and go, we'd like, the
pull out
a
half kilo of butter and just plug it. So can you use this? I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
It's never ending because you spoke about vegan food and I went off dairy while I was fixing some gut stuff a wee while ago and I was like, we'll get some of this vegan cheese first thing. First and second ingredient.
What's it made of?
No.
Canola oil.
and wheat.
Yeah, and then I was like mayonnaise, and I was like soy boy oil. I was like, for goodness sake.
And the brand
pesto as well.
Yeah.
I found one that's olive oil.
Yeah, there's one olive oil based, and the vegan cheese is. I probably shouldn't say this, but too late now. The brand's called Angel.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not so sure about that.
It was hideous. We stopped using that real fast.
Yeah. But it's interesting because the story about vegetable oils is not getting, it hasn't really progressed, and it'll be interesting to see how long it takes. It gets there. Because if you look at a high carber who follows the national guidelines and they go low carb, it doesn't need to necessarily be the extreme ends of keto, but they go low carb and they reduce the carb, they reduce the sugar, they change the types of fats that they eat, and they up the fat. You get these profoundly anti-inflammatory effects. And yes, it's possibly from the sugar. It could be from the circulating ketones because we know those are anti-inflammatory. But I have a sneaky suspicion that there's a healthy amount of contribution to this anti-inflammatory state from the realignment of those omega-6, omega-3, the ratio.
And that's funny. I saw somebody the other day posting some dietary guidelines from the UK, and it was very much this vegetarian-based thing, and then it said plant oils. And this person is if she's not already a doctor training to be a doctor, I just said to her, "Are you for real?" And needless to say, I didn't get a reply. But it's pretty devastating to see that that's out there, and along the lines of calories in, calories out, still at the forefront. And
it's only out there because of the saturated fat scaremongering. That's the only reason they're saying have vegetable oils. And
I guess 6 years on, I think, into this fight, I'm not sure we've made that much progress with that.
No, probably not. Well, we have made progress, but not really with the groups that we need to make progress with.
Yeah. And touching on that, you shared a tweet the other day from Diabetics New Zealand. High fiber. What else did they say? In grains, and again, for people, maybe type 1s, and Grant and I talked about driving on the motorway with two switches banging into the sides, or driving along nicely. But our type 2s, our insulin resistant population, getting them on the grains.
What a great idea that is. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, you can't tolerate carbohydrates. Have more of them.
Yeah.
And so, why do you think the fiber aspect keeps getting hammered home? And again, and I interviewed the I don't know if you call him crazy or revolutionary Sean Baker, who's gone carnivore, but he said he's getting all these people that are eating no fiber and their digestion's gone great guns. So, what do you do?
Well, the reason I think you need fiber is so microbes can convert it into short chain fatty acids, butyrate. So you need just to get your take of saturated fat. That's the fate of healthy microbes and fiber. whether they come from. I mean, also the whole grains thing in fibre. I think it's a crock. It's like whole grains. You take me to the supermarket. We'll stand there at the checkout, and we'll find
me a good whole grain.
Find me a whole grain.
Real whole grain.
Find me a proper whole grain that's, not once were whole grains. Used to be whole grains in another life cycle before it was crushed and pulverised into nothing. But show me an actual whole grain coming through the checkout. Because I don't know where they are.
And this is complete lack of acknowledgement that you can get fibre from vegetables.
Yeah.
And no one's telling you to cut out vegetables. In fact, when you go whole food, LCHF, low carb, healthy fat, we promote vegetables, So I don't quite get that.
But Rod's got a good point with the whole carnivore stuff. That's an interesting movement. It's it's quite interesting to look at these different where these communities come from. So if you look at keto at the moment, it's quite on trend in Silicon Valley. Elon Musk's starting for his low carb. This and the other thing. It's quite a thing. Well, but the carnivore thing seems to be that whole Bitcoin, cryptocurrency community has gone right into it. Way more on the edge.
Yeah,
so it's an interesting place to look, and their sort of self-experimentation and being ostensibly fine. Haven't actually tried that myself yet. I might do that later in there.
No, I won't be trying it anytime soon.
Yeah.
No, it's
not because I think it's bad for you at all, but it's I actually like vegetables.
I quite like vegetables as well. Yeah, I do. But,
I enjoy, especially now I've got a veggie garden, getting up in the morning and taking up a couple of bits of kale and lettuce. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
While we're talking of organisations, Milo's lost its house stars, thank goodness. Are we going to get coconut oil to have a few more, or cacao butter maybe? I don't know.
Not in the next little while.
I think that whole system will just disappear, won't it? Quietly.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I'd like to think so. I mean, even the people who developed it are well aware that it's problematic. So
and are calling for a radical overhaul.
Yeah, and it's time to go, okay, we got it wrong. Let's change the system to something really simple. Not what they think might be simple.
Yeah.
Something that's really simple and not misleading.
Although, to be fair, has been recently a review of the health star rating in Australia and New Zealand done because it's run out of Australia. New Zealand, say, is essentially one of how many other states there are in Australia. So we're the sixth state or whatever. Okay. So, virtually we've got no say. And you know how fully run Australian nutrition and dietetics is by industry. So, I'm not actually hopeful of a change anytime soon. But I think, New Zealand consumers are discerning enough to go, this is rubbish. I think that's well and truly clear. I don't know how many people it is actually misleading because it's so stupid. It's actually sort of the laughing stock, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it is misleading because there's this belief that everyone knows that you shouldn't compare products that don't go in the same category. So you shouldn't compare a cereal with a yogurt. But you do. You pick up a product, you look at the star, and that gives you an instant indication of what it's like. You don't necessarily pick up two yogurts and go, which one should I have? You pick up the one that you normally go for. So it doesn't work how it was intended to work.
Oh, well, hopefully it just dies quietly and we'll go back to, the basic definition. If you're looking on packets, I keep saying this, Ryan, I think if you keep looking on packets to, with special symbols to show you what you should eat. Honestly, like the whole point of actual food is that it's not in a packet.
Yeah. So, and also these days I guide my clients, they go, if I am going to buy packaged food, what should I look at? Like how many grams of sugar, or grams of carbs, or grams of fat? And I say, don't even look at the table. Look at the number of ingredients and go with the fewest ingredients possible. And if you don't recognize anything, don't buy it. And you can get by perfectly well like that.
Absolutely. Do you think we're lucky in New Zealand that we're still rather primitive? We're not too far away from our agricultural families, but that's turning pretty quickly around in terms of people being anti-agriculture or anti-farming. But there's plenty of people whose parents had veggie gardens, plenty of people's parents who got beasts and put them in the freezer. Are we lucky in New Zealand, or?
I think so, but this whole anti-agriculture thing. I mean, it's based on US data on basically growing grains to feed the cows. Like, honestly, it's like, we're still back to grains here. Just show me some decent data which shows that, I'm sure New Zealand agriculture could do better with, being a little bit more close to nature with its farming and less fertiliser and not polluting waterways and containing all that mess. I absolutely agree with that. We could be more sustainable, and I think that whole community wants to work towards that. I need to hear people who don't.
Yeah.
But as for this whole, that being the major source of emissions, I don't currently believe all the data.
It's not a great argument. But, the interesting thing is that, in New Zealand, we do have grass-fed beef. We do have lots of vegetable gardening that's going to schools. We've got community gardens. We've got the stuff that's working. But you cannot get away from the fact that if you drive down the motorway and you go to South Auckland, and it's not only South Auckland, it's everywhere, you've got all these chains, not only, the McDonald's, the Burger King, the Krispy Kreme, all that stuff, but you've got these takeaways, the non-entity fast food takeaways, and these foods are just ever present. So you can eat vegetables and you can eat grass-fed meat, but there's an overwhelming amount of rubbish that people buy because it's just convenient and it is cheap.
It's you talk about driving down South Auckland or even Dominion Road. You've got all, like you say, these non-entity fast food chains that you go in there and look at the menu, and if you're not eating carbohydrates, you go, this is going to be interesting. What do I eat?
You fast. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Intermittent fasting on that day.
Yeah.
No, that's right. You can make a choice to not eat, which is handy. Before we get into the fasting, because it's a really interesting topic, and we were lucky to have Megan Ramos from Intensive Dietary Management on a couple of episodes ago. But you're speaking with Aaron Farmer from My Sugar-Free Journey, and this was around the fasting. But one of the key sort of anecdotes you talked about was as a flight attendant who you were getting everything right from a diet perspective. She was doing everything right, but every time she came home, she felt like rubbish. And when she was away in the hotel, she was fine. And my girlfriend and I have spoke about mold before and how it is inflammatory and was stuffing up our hormones and stuffing up our absorption of nutrients. What is, in New Zealand, we live in these damp homes, what is your sort of exposure in clinical practice to mold?
Not a lot. I don't get a lot of the head scratching clients, but more and more you see people who have got these non-specific symptoms where you change their diet, you sort out their stress or get them to sort out their stress, they're sleeping well, everything's going well, they're doing regular amounts of exercise, not over exercising, and they're still not well, whether it manifests as just feeling off or their gut is not well or something. And it's really only by, number one, asking a whole lot of sort of piercing questions about their life and what they do when they feel good, when they don't feel good. And then the last resort is to do some intensive testing. So you can get into the organic acids test. We don't do them here. We do them by Australia, and they cost between $500 and $1,000 a pop. So, they can show you that you might live in an environment that has got environmental toxins. It might be an overload of the chemicals that are in cosmetics, the fumes that are coming from an industrial area next door. And that place,
or a mouldy home?
Or a mouldy home, absolutely. Yeah. There are only about 2 or 3 clients that I've had so far that they've put it together and they've gone, right, I've moved out and it's gone. And then they've figured out they've had mold. So it is a real issue. Like I said, I don't see many of them, but I would have no doubt that it's a real issue for people.
Caryn, as a professor of public health, is it on the radar?
No. Well, I think that. I think that the trouble is in New Zealand, the housing stock is so awful, and actually, strangely, I actually think it gets better the further south you go, mainly because it's just colder, and you actually have to build a decent house, otherwise you get really cold. The trouble is that Auckland, well, for example, it's a really damp place, but it's actually not that cold or that hot, so we don't build places to. I lived in Australia where it was hot. Well, you had to sort yourself out for it because you wouldn't be able to sleep at night. We just haven't quite got that. We've got poor quality housing.
Yeah, we have. Interesting. I never forget. A long time ago, I went to a conference in Dunedin in the middle of winter, and I was never warmer inside than I was in Dunedin.
Yeah, and that's not universally true for the old student flats and that sort of thing. I just think we see a whole lot of people do much better and better housing, and that's a massive issue for this country.
So I just want to raise an interesting point about, the questions about gut health or mold or whatever. There's a real spectrum of what you can do in your life to get better. And I know there are lots of organizations banging on about having healthy whole grains and having low-fat milk and all that kind of stuff. And I think it depends on where you start. And if you start as someone who's got an absolute tragic diet, who lives on Coca-Cola and fast food, absolutely, without a doubt, you can change your diet and have healthy whole grains and get better outcomes. The issue is, can you get even better outcomes on whole food LCHF? And the answer is, of course you can, because of the whole, insulin resistance and all that kind of stuff. Then you get those people that are doing everything well, that got their carbs down, their insulin resistance is well managed, and the head scratches. So there are other things, whether it's hormonal interactions, whether it's these organic acids, whether it's environmental toxins, whether it's sleep or stress or combination. So there's a real spectrum, and people need to decide where on the spectrum they start, and of course how they're going to shift.
Because that's the other thing in public health, is we're also looking to improve the whole population. Where's the easiest win? To me, a classic argument for this at the moment is we've been with exercise and going, well, we actually went for the lowest possible common denominator. 30 minutes of anything, just don't even sit down, that'd be all right, on 5 days of the week. And there is some benefit to that.
Yeah.
There is no way that's the optimal benefit. And the far-reaching benefits of being fit and exercise, the dose is way bigger than that.
Yeah.
And it keeps going,
So from a population point of view, I get that, but then we need to, and we are absolutely guilty of this. We say best practice says that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I argue time and time again, it's average practice. It's not best practice. We need to be very careful with those words.
Or in the case of exercise, it's lowest amount you need. Like I do. If I did just 30 minutes of moving any sort of day, I'd be so sedentary and unfit, it would be pathetic. I mean, I'd take it quite seriously, frankly. I do.
Thank goodness for that.
So, I do lots of exercise. I love it. And it's really good. So,
yeah, that's low impact. I like it, Grant. So you touched low carb, high fat. People say, oh, it's restrictive. You're allowed to be vegan, which is also restrictive. Your low carb down under chat showed that low carb, high fat is not restrictive, and in fact, your nutrient profile is beautiful. You've spoken about a few of the foods that are in there. Was there any sort of close calls with a low carb way of life?
With nutrients?
Yeah.
What is that new paper in BMJ Open that you just published?
We just published a paper looking at a moderately low carb diet. It was about 65, 70 grams of carbohydrate, and looked at a nutrient profile. And it was absolutely good as gold. I mean, admittedly, it was well formulated. Like any diet, if you want it to be nutrient replete, you have to put some effort in, right? You can't just eat,
noodles,
bacon for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and expect your nutrient profile to be replete. So it was a nutrient replete diet. But the interesting thing is that the only nutrient that we found to be slightly compromised by like 2% was iron. But then again, that was just one day that we looked at. And if you put into an equivalent computer program, Ministry of Health guideline-based diet, it comes up the same. Iron doesn't meet either, because it's just one day. So I think we need to be careful.
And also on top of that, who knows what that recommendation is anyway for iron?
Yeah, exactly.
And in fact, high iron is probably more of a public health problem than low iron, frankly.
Yeah.
But still.
But also those nutrient programs that don't take into consideration how bioavailable these nutrients are in the body. We know that a high, healthy, whole grain diet has lots of phytates, which binds with iron and makes it less bioavailable to the body. So you can actually access your nutrients better on low carb. The other really, really interesting thing is the vitamin B1 argument, thiamine. So when low carb first sort of came out, there were dietitians, particularly in Australia, going, if you don't have any grains, you will get thiamine deficiency, and you'll end up getting the deficiency state, which is flapping tremor, coma, and death. No, we don't see this very often. So of course, vitamin B1 you can get in a range of foods, and nuts and seeds and pork and vegetables and things. But the interesting thing is that one of the main functions of B1 is for carbohydrate metabolism. So thinking about biochemistry, if you have less carbohydrate, if you're eating less carbohydrate, you're metabolizing less carbohydrate, and maybe your daily needs for vitamin B1 are less. Maybe. So all this kind of stuff is untapped. We just go by the RDIs, the recommended daily intakes. And of course, they were developed in the context of, a mainstream standard high carb, low fat diet.
And I'd also say, look, if you want to stay in shape in your life, you're going to have some rules around your food. There has to be some rule. It can't just be like, I'll just walk down the road and, go and, if I feel like a cream bun and a Coke or just in a pie, that's obviously going to be bad. You need some rules.
I agree.
Some structure. Well, of all the different possible structures that there actually are that have any health benefit, low carb, healthy fat by far is the most nourishing, fills you up the most, makes you feel, gives you the best chance of carrying on and having a full and happy day. And in my experience, and I've tried every conceivable type of way of eating over the years, and I really love the N=1 self-experiment.
Carnivorous diet.
I haven't tried that one, next. Frankly, but that's not sort of that mainstream, to be fair, just yet.
That's also shown that you don't need as much vitamin C, because apparently your carbs and your vitamin C are competing, so you don't need quite so much vitamin C on
yeah, right.
So the interesting thing is, you think about the pot calling the kettle black, and people pointing fingers at LCHF going, it's really restrictive. But if you look at the other side of the coin, which is low fat, that can be restrictive too. Particularly if you go to a restaurant and there's olive oil over everything, you've got to avoid that. So I think any way you eat in your life, there is going to be a healthy amount of restriction. That's just life. It's
that doesn't depend. In reality, I just came from Forehead Run. I had to give a whole bunch of people a tour of our facility and show them what goes on here and blah, blah, blah. And, of course, we talked about low carb, healthy fat. There was a bunch of school careers counsellors, so hopefully they'll send their kids to a good place to come to AET. And I had lunch afterwards, and I've got a vegan option and a vegetarian option and a low fat option and every conceivable option. But it's all freaking carbs. There's not a single low carb option, so that was the end of lunch.
For you, anyway. Yeah.
And as you said, that's the end of lunch. No lunch. You're walking down Dominion Road or South Auckland. You're not having dinner. Surely that's very restrictive. Why would someone want to fast for?
What was that?
Oh, the fast. Yeah. Well, you don't. I don't think in the modern world you necessarily do. Would want to fast. It's not a normal thing for a human to choose in the face of being presented with lots of food. Like what human in history would have gone, no, just not eating today. Of course you'd do that if food turned up. Naturally when we're presented with the sight and smell of food, we're like, okay, it's on. That's what you do. But I think if you go back in human history and go, actually, this whole 3 meals a day plus 2 snacks, what's the chances of actually humans being able to have that available? And I think it's very little.
Well, and there's no evidence behind it either. So it's just totally off.
So do we need 3 meals and snacks a day? And if we arranged our life differently, so we don't have food in our face and we don't eat at those meals, what happens to us? Do we turn into blithering idiots and get angry? Or in fact, if we've done it well, is it actually something that's really actually part of the biological fluctuations of being a human, and that sort of cycling in and out of food availability is very good for us. And I actually reckon that last part's absolutely true, that this biological fluctuation in humans from food availability is actually turning out to be crucial at the cellular level for health. In other words, missing out on food occasionally, which is, requires some effort to orchestrate in the modern world, has probably happened to humans for most of the time they've been on the planet by the way it's worked out.
They didn't have to be conscious about it.
Well, no. Well, of course. So we've got this sort of competing thing. If food actually turns up in front of you, the sight and smell of it, you're going to be like, okay, it's on, I'm eating, because we're so designed for that. But if it's orchestrated so food doesn't turn up, is that good for you? And I think, that's, to me, we've just started What the Fast book's just coming out as we speak, where we've really tried to examine the science and practice behind that. I think people would be surprised how rapidly that science is developing. It's really only the last 3-4 years, and even particularly just 2017 was a massive year for fasting research publications, both in terms of trials, but also the plausible biology. It's quite hard to do the epidemiology on that because it's not like this whole population's doing this, but really the experimental and biological benefits to me are really compelling.
Well, of course, when you win the Nobel Prize, it's sort of facilitates people.
Well, because that's the other thing, Ryan, that I think people forgot is that at my age, which is coming up 50, when I went to high school, you did the cell diagram, and then you always had the nucleus and the mitochondria, and you just we sort of knew what they did at that point, and we labelled them.
Lipid
bilayer, but there was always the lysosome.
Yeah, and the Golgi bodies.
Yeah, the Golgi bodies. But the lysosome was just sort of sitting there, and no one really knew what that was for them. And it's true, they didn't actually know. And that's really what that 2016 Nobel Prize in Physiology was for the Japanese fellow who discovered that, which was this notion of autophagy, which is that under nutrient stress conditions, in other words, no food available, that at the cellular level, that lysosome's activated into a sort of intracellular cleaning program, and it's traveling around the cell, scavenging nutrients that are just happen to be floating around, and to recycle them. And there's evidence when it's done that process, it moves to the cell wall and can do that, engage in that process extracellularly. So that process of autophagy is just implicit to the cellular process of being sometimes anabolic, where there's an inflammatory growth state. That's entirely normal. We want that, except for most humans are tragically trapped in that pattern the whole life, and they never get the chance to go the opposite of anabolic, which is catabolic, which is where you activate these autophagic mechanisms, and the body isn't dividing cells; it's cleaning up what it's got, it's scavenging, it's doing that, and that basic fact, I think, provokes anyone with a scientific mind, which is hopefully most of the people listening to this, that actually there's something in this.
And maybe that's one of the reasons why sleep is a non-negotiable. It forces everyone to have that process to a certain extent, even though it might only be
an hour,
6, 7.
Well, it takes a while because you've got to get insulin down. You've got to get glucose down. You've got to get all those hormones back to baseline to even start to engage this process. Which, if you're insulin resistant, you're probably never going to get to. But
well, at least everyone's starting it. No one's not everyone's completing it.
Yeah. So that stuff to me is interesting. And then the other sort of part of that, the apoptosis, where again, it's happening all the time, but nutrient stress or lack of nutrients, really stimulates that process as well. So we're going to, not just clean up within cells, but there's entire cells that the body will decide are done, and just recycle them and reuse them as parts. So, you scavenge nutrients from there as well.
Absolutely. But before we came on, Grant said you hadn't had much vibe around the book, but Caryn gave a great talk about super fasting, and I shared it with a friend. And everybody's been asking, when's the book coming out? So Caryn, talk us through super fasting, and what's the story behind doing some super fasting each week?
Yeah, so what we did was, so a little bit of background. What we did was we looked at what was out there in terms of intermittent fasting and some of the systems that people talk about. And there are different benefits to some of them, like the 5-2, for example. But there are also some flaws to some of them that we believe. And we believe, particularly with the 5-2, that when you are eating, you can eat whatever you want. And we don't really think that's the best way to do it. It's definitely one way to do it, and you can get lots of great results. We think that it is better to have a combination of fasting combined with eating low-carb, healthy fat meals across the week, so that you have the benefit of getting close to, if not into ketosis. So the idea is that you fast on a Monday, 24-hour fast on a Monday. So you start literally Sunday evening, 24-hour fast on a Monday. Then you have a low-carb super meal, so a nice nutrient-rich meal on Monday night. Then you carry on Tuesday, you fast again, and you have another super meal on Tuesday night. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you eat low carb, however you want. If you want to miss a meal, fine, but typically not structure or anything. And then on the weekend, if you want to, overindulge, if that came about. So for example, if you went out for dinner and there was a bit of dessert and you wanted some, that's fine. And then, start all over again. So the thing that I wanted to get across is that we suggest doing this as a bit of a kickstart. So doing it for a month. So Monday, Tuesday, of course it can be a Wednesday, Thursday if the time's right for those people. Monday, Tuesday for 4 weeks. See what you get, see how you feel, see how it sits with you, okay? And then based on what you get, then you decide, what do I want from this? And you might decide, this is me. Or you might decide, I might do it once a month. Or you might decide, actually Monday, 24-hour fast once a week is enough for me. Because some people might actually, believe it or not, when you're sitting down, lose too much weight when you do it. So, you've got to evaluate what your goal is, why you're doing it, and then construct what you want to do accordingly.
And I'd sort of add to that. I think there's so much out there about different ways of eating and timing of meals, and you can go for a sort of just generally, you sort of look at the flavours. Well, there's a lot of research done on alternate day fasting. Eat whatever you want one day, eat nothing the next day. Like, to me, that's just, and they get people to do it, and, they can get 6 months trials and whatever. Like, seriously, that's not sustainable. And then I met, and then you go, well, what about compressed eating windows? Well, great. Can you provide a little bit of structure around this so that you stay on the horse? Because, you're a human, you'll fall off. And this has been our best go at the combination of all that. So, like for us, and the way we've designed it is, people, if you're going to work and you're busy around the house or whatever you're doing, Monday and Tuesday are usually pretty flat out. That's great. Get on with your life. You've got more time actually, because you're not spending time eating. Have a nutritious meal at night, carry on. And that's a great big problem with the 5-2 is on those 2 days I go eat 500 calories. Doesn't matter about the timing, doesn't matter what they are. I think that's just doesn't line up with the science. Like you need to keep the carbs down.
Yeah. And
if you're going to have a nutrient-rich meal, have it as one meal and get all that benefit of the autophagy and the cell cleanup.
Yeah. Because if you had 150 calories 3 or 4 times a day, these are 500 calories, but you're not actually leaving the time for your cells to self.
And you're still hungry. And so we'd say have a meal, fill yourself up, carry on. And when we've measured ketones across that week, what you see is, you have a lowish carb Sunday where your ketones are, started at 0 because you might have had something on Saturday night. They start to go up a bit on Sunday. By Monday, by the end of the day, you're right into ketosis. By the end of Tuesday, you're deep into it. By Wednesday, Thursday, you sort of carry it on. Friday, all of a sudden something, you might have a couple of beers or a wine or something, and, you fall off a bit, so they drop down to 0 again, and same on Saturday. Well, you get this natural cycling of, I'm not encouraging cheating or binging or any of that stuff. All I'm saying is that you end up with a more natural cycle of the body's, natural anabolic process
and biology
and natural catabolic process. So it's just a normal process. And, you could go, well, why can't I just do that normally? Well, you could. And humans have, it's our proposition that humans have naturally fallen into the cycle for the entire time they've been on the planet. And what's happened, of course, in recent times, it's just no longer possible. And I earlier described it as a tragic situation for us. We're stuck in a constant growth process. And this is just from our sort of combination of Caryn's clinical practice, basic behavioural stuff, which we've tried to bring to the table, and getting enough nutrients and remaining satisfied. This is, to me, this is a great way to do it.
And I think it also allows you to experience ketosis if you're not planning on going hardcore ketogenic diet the whole time, because that can be quite restrictive. And of course, if you eat something, you eat something off the menu, you get so disheartened about getting kicked out of ketosis. Well, we believe that actually cycling in and out of ketosis and keeping the body guessing in different states is the best way moving forward. And actually, if you look at some of the research around exposing your bodies to extreme heat, like sauna, and extreme cold, that has an impact on longevity. And I think from a dietary perspective, there's probably something to that as well.
Well, yeah, there is actually. And the whole sort of chaperone cells and all those things, exactly the same thing you see with those heat shock proteins, the same thing that happens with fasting. You know, it's just another form of, it's stressful. And last thing I would just say for food lovers and fasting is one thing I learned from a lady that I met a couple of years ago. She's like, I fast every Wednesday. I was like, oh, why is that? She goes, because I love food so much. And I said, like, well, what do you mean? You're not eating on Wednesdays? That's a great food lover's technique, isn't it? You know? And she goes, no, but it allows me to appreciate even more what I'm eating. You know, and I think that's an important thing with life, really, isn't it? You know, everything seems good until you get too much of it.
And I think there are people who are not going to fly with our system, and there are going to be lots of people who are going to fly. So there's a lot of devil in the detail, and it's important to actually look at the strategies that we put around our rules to make them work for you. So there's a lot of really awesome stuff in the book, some real good tools that will help you cope with doing this.
So apart from for everybody, who's the book aimed at?
No, not everybody.
All right, good.
Apart from, so I mean, we have put some disclaimers or rules or whatever you want to call it around where it might not be appropriate. So of course, for pregnant women, you know, lactation, for young kids, I mean, they might miss a meal here and there, but not intentional fasting. Look, we think that if anyone is underweight or if anyone has a particularly volatile relationship with food, it might not be for them. I'm not saying it's not for them, because actually I have had some clients that have had a volatile relationship with food and find fasting actually helps them. So we need to not put people in boxes.
To me, then first, anyone who's done any sort of carb restriction, low carb type things, I mean, this is obvious extension.
Yeah, it is.
Because you're used to burning fat. You know, this just pushes you a bit further into out of your comfort zone, and you stand to benefit from it.
And typically people who are eating LCHF anyway, they go, oh, well, I'm already missing meals here and there. So, you know, when you're not hungry and you become more in tune with your hunger fullness, and you intuitively go, I don't feel like breakfast, it gets you there. Yeah.
And also, I guess the other thing is when we wrote What the Fat, which is our low carb book, you know, it's a sort of general plan. Here's how you eat. Yeah. You know, this is actually just like, let's get specific. Okay, you want a monthly challenge? You know, here's 4 weeks. Go for it. There's all the meals. It's all laid out. You know, here's how you'd structure it. You know, and you know, with the flexibility that you need to be a human, obviously. And we felt that was a really missing part. And you know, things like 5-2. Like we really liked some of the stuff about the whole 5-2 idea, but just its refinement to the actual practice, and you know, and being more sensitive about the effects of different nutrients on your body. Like it just needed. Mike Mosley did a great job, but it needed more. Yeah.
Nice. So where do people find it?
So by the time this comes out, we're just in the throes of releasing this in mid-April. So when you go to whatthefatbook.com, you can pre-order it there. But after that, you'll be able to order it there, and then it'll be up for pre-order on Kindle as well. So there'll be both versions available, and we're into it. You know, like it's these things with always the thing with writing books, Ryan, is you know, you put so much effort into and energy in your life, pour your life into these things to, you know, get every last detail right, and you hope for the best. And we're really excited about what we've done, but you know, it's still to be decided by all you folks out there about whether we've done a good job or not. So you know, so give us some feedback. You know, we're open to everything. We've poured everything we had. We've given it everything we had. We're really proud of what we've got. But
and we wrote it when we were all doing extended fasts, so it should be our most productive work.
Yeah, I would say though, I've just done just because just to get myself up to speed again, just over the last 5 weeks, I did follow the program exactly to the letter every day, and this was following a little bit of a boozy Christmas. So I actually ended up dropping from 88.9 kilos to 81.
Wow.
And my running's got back into my running. There is that aspect as well. But I haven't. You know, so I'm coming at 50, and I just decided if you're 50, you should be in as good a shape as when you were 20.
Yeah.
So actually, I think I'm in better shape than when I was 20. And so yeah, I'm going well.
Awesome.
Nice. No, thank you very much, and we'll make sure to share the link as always, and share the link to both yourself and Caryn, so people can find your awesome series of blog posts and get deep into the science of low carb, high fat, and now fasting. So thank you very much, guys. And for each of you, been a pleasure.
Yeah, as always, Ryan. So thanks for having us again.
Yeah,
we could talk about this for forever. We're pretty passionate about food, and it's such a complicated area that there's so much to talk about. But the fasting's a great way of keeping on top of things. And I'm sure a bunch of your listeners have already done this and got their own stories and things. So, if you haven't and just try it, well, good luck. And as Caryn said, the devil's in the detail. Like anything that you do well in life, devil's in the detail.
Yeah.
Nice. So last time Grant left us with the health is about the 4 pillars. It's what you're eating, where you're moving, who you're doing it with, and the fourth one I can't quite remember.
Yeah. What did I say?
What you're eating, where you're moving, who you're doing it with. Maybe it's just 3. I don't know.
Why you're doing it.
Why? Yeah, why? Of course, that was why. Caryn, what would you like to leave people with from a health perspective?
Oh, I hate being put on the spot like that. I think people need to focus on having more fun and laughing more. It does absolutely wonders for people. It's assuming all your nutrition and your exercise and all that kind of stuff is right. But just have fun and laugh.
Nice. And,
that is a good point, because it's very easy to get trapped in the day. Oh, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe the guidelines like this. We get Grant reviews back, and they just haven't heard of low carb, but we're just getting quite a tiz. But we should just have
having a laugh and being silly, I just think has so much value.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and I've definitely been laughing listening to you two today. So thanks for that as well.
I think that was intended.
Very good. Cheers, guys, and we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Cool.